Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going back in time.
Oh, this will be good.
It will be, yeah. To the 1860s.
Okay.
To Whitby, Canada, to explore the mysterious story of a woman
Interesting.
known only as Mrs. Glass. We've got excerpts from this book called Mrs. Glass, Havoc and Mystery in Whitby.
Sounds promising.
It is. And the most fascinating thing about this woman is that we don't even know her real name.
Really?
Yeah.
But she was notorious enough to leave a mark on Whitby's history.
Wow, I know, right? That's what makes it so interesting.
Like, how does someone become a local legend but stay completely hidden?
It's like we're trying to put together this puzzle,
Right.
but half the pieces are missing.
Exactly.
So let's start with what we do know.
Yeah.
Who was this Mrs. Glass?
Well, according to the book, which is based on old newspaper articles, mainly from the Whitby Chronicle, she was a pretty well-known but controversial figure in Whitby.
Got it.
She ran what they called back then a house of ill fame.
Oh, I see.
Which is really just a fancy Victorian way of saying a brothel.
Oh, wow, a brothel in Victorian Canada.
Yeah, can you imagine?
That's like the opposite of what Victorian society was all about.
Right. It really shows how bold she was.
Yeah.
To run a business that so openly defied their morals.
For sure. And get this.
Yeah.
We still don't know the exact location of her brothel.
Really? That's wild.
I know, right? It makes it even more mysterious.
Yeah, it's like she was intentionally operating in secret.
It does. The book also introduces this guy, Chief Constable Alexander Cameron.
Okay.
He seemed to be her main rival.
I see. Their relationship must have been interesting.
Oh, definitely. You have Cameron, totally dedicated to the law.
Right.
And then you've got Mrs. Glass, basically living by breaking it.
That's a recipe for conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book says Cameron tried to shut down her business over and over again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she was charged with all sorts of offenses, even assaulting him with an axe at one point.
An axe.
An axe.
Wow. Sounds like she wasn't someone to mess with.
Not at all. It really gives you a sense of her character.
Yeah, she definitely stood up for herself.
She did. But then there's another incident mentioned in the book that really changes how you see Mrs. Glass.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it involves a missing girl. A young girl, maybe 13 or 14 years old, disappears on her way to see her aunt.
Oh, how awful.
It is. And guess what? They suspected Mrs. Glass lured her to Whitby and was holding her captive.
Really? That's terrible. What happened?
The girl's father, of course, was going crazy looking for her, searching everywhere.
I can't imagine.
And Constable Cameron, well, he already didn't trust Mrs. Glass, right? So he had a feeling she was involved.
So was he right?
He was. Cameron found the girl at Mrs. Glass's house, although Mrs. Glass tried to hide her.
Wow, talk about a tense situation.
Oh, totally. It's like something out of an old crime movie.
I can only imagine. A frantic father, a determined constable, and Mrs. Glass caught in the act.
Exactly. It makes you wonder what was going through her head at that moment.
Right. Was she scared? Did she regret it?
Yeah, who knows? What gets me is that the girl's father didn't even press charges against Mrs. Glass.
Yeah, that's hard to understand now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, today,
Right.
things would be so different.
Yeah, you have to remember the times were different back then.
Just so.
Victorian society was all about appearances.
Right.
Especially for women. Maybe the father was afraid that taking it to court would ruin his daughter's reputation.
That's sad.
It is. It's a tough situation all around.
Yeah, you really feel for everyone involved. The book mentions that the editor of the newspaper, the Whitby Chronicle, was furious about it.
Oh, yeah, William Higgins.
Right, Higgins. He used the paper to really condemn Mrs. Glass.
Oh, yeah, he was not happy.
Not at all.
He kept saying she was a danger to the town and that she was taking advantage of vulnerable people.
It's interesting how the newspaper becomes part of the story.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like a character.
It shows how much influence the press had even back then.
For sure. They could really shape how people saw things. Definitely. And hold those in power accountable.
But Mrs. Glass's story, well, it doesn't end there.
Of course not. There's more.
There's more, just a week later.
Wow, things move fast.
I know, right? Cameron raided her house again.
Really? What for this time?
Selling liquor without a license?
Always something with her.
Oh, yeah, and you won't believe this.
What?
She apparently attacked him with an axe again.
An axe again? Are you serious?
Again! I know, it's crazy, right? Makes you wonder if the newspapers were exaggerating things a bit.
Maybe. They did love a good story.
True. But even if it was exaggerated, she clearly had a reputation.
Yeah, people thought of her as someone you didn't want to mess with.
Exactly. She was known for being confrontational.
Maybe even dangerous.
Possibly. But here's where things take a real turn. After January 1862, Mrs. Glass just disappears, vanishes from history.
Really?
Boof.
Gone.
That's unbelievable.
I know. It's the most mysterious part of the whole thing.
Yeah, where does she go?
Did she run away? Change her name? Or did something worse happen?
The book doesn't say.
It's like her story just ends.
It's like a cliffhanger.
It makes you want more.
It does. And get this, Constable Cameron's life took a bad turn too.
Oh no, what happened?
Despite being this dedicated lawman, he was fired from the police.
Really? Why?
Something unrelated to Mrs. Glass.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Wow.
He ended up poor and died without anyone even marking his grave.
That's so sad. After all he did for the town?
It is. It makes you think about their stories together.
It's kind of ironic.
It is. Mrs. Glass defying the rules and getting away with it.
Yeah.
And Cameron trying to uphold the law but ending up with nothing.
It's a reminder that history isn't always clear-cut.
Yeah, it's messy.
It is. We often find people who are both good and bad.
Exactly. Makes you question everything.
It does. Makes you think about all the different sides of the story.
So, where does that leave us? What can we learn from Mrs. Glass, even though we don't know everything?
I think it gives us a peek into a side of Victorian society that we don't usually see. You know, it challenges that picture-perfect image we often have.
Right.
It shows us this world where you have these strict morals.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's this whole hidden world going on underneath.
Like a double life.
Exactly. It's full of contradictions.
It's like Mrs. Glass, just by doing what she did, exposed all those contradictions.
Yeah, she was a smart woman.
She was.
Making her way in this world that wasn't so black and white.
Right. Bending the rules.
Bending the rules, using the system to her advantage.
And in the end, she disappeared. Got away with it.
Makes you wonder what she was really after.
It does. Was it all about money? Or was she trying to be independent?
Maybe she was just rebelling against how society treated women.
It's hard to say.
It is. And what about how it all ended for her?
Right. Did she escape and start a new life? Or was she forced into that life because she had no other choices?
Tough to know for sure. We only have these bits and pieces of information.
And a lot of opinions from back then.
Right. People saw things differently.
It reminds us that history isn't always simple.
Nope. There's always more to the story.
More questions than answers.
It's like trying to solve a mystery.
Exactly. We have to look at the evidence and figure things out ourselves.
Consider different points of view.
You come to our own conclusions.
That's what makes history so interesting.
It does. So, Mrs. Glass, she remains a mystery.
Yeah, a real enigma.
This woman who broke the rule.
And left her mark on Whitby.
What do you think our listeners should take away from all of this?
I think it's important to remember that history is full of amazing people.
Yeah.
People whose stories make us rethink what we thought we knew.
And challenge us.
Absolutely. I'd encourage everyone to keep digging into history.
Yes.
Learn more about Victorian Canada.
Right.
And think about the complexities of Mrs. Glass's life.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into the world of Mrs. Glass.
A fascinating journey.
It was. We hope you enjoyed it.
And learned something new.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.